What's up, everyone? This is the Go Long Happy Hour. We're bringing them back this 2026 NFL season. And what a thrill, what a pleasure to welcome in Eric Wood. You are a recurring guest on these happy hours. It's been a few years, Eric, but
It has.
God, always love seeing you there. One Bills Drive. We go back to the craziness of 2015, which I'm sure
Yep.
we'll touch on. I got asked about that in my mailbag last week, and all the memories came flooding back. We can look back fondly, all of us now.
I
But
know I referenced that on a radio appearance today. Oh, we were talking about someone asked me about Joe Brady and how he's handling everything. And I said, there's some new messaging around the Bills this year. It's, you got to play the Buffalo Bills. We're going to dictate to you. We're not going to, shy away from it. Yes, we're going to prepare this and that. And I'm like, you just always have to be careful saying too much. Like, we start off fairly hot, a lot of momentum with Rex, and then, we crap the bed the second year and he's fired, not even all the way through the season. So, you put a lot of attention on yourself when you say too much. And I'm not saying Joe is. I think he's handling it well. And that's, you could tell by what the guys are saying that that's the messaging in the building. Like, you got to play us. I want you to play free, play loose, and there's always going to be, a yin and yang to coaching styles. And Joe's trying to implement his style into the organization. And you could tell it's just, you get them too pumped up, saying too much, you're an easy target at that point.
I don't know. Say everything you want, Joe Brady, Josh Allen, every coach, every player. Let it rip, as far as I'm concerned in the media.
Well, and if you lose anyways, you're going to be public enemy number one. So you might be able to buy yourself a little extra grace if you're, sweet and this and that. But in the end, the results are going to dictate your future in the NFL.
Obviously, Eric is the outstanding, not just saying it because you're sitting here, color commentator on the Bills radio broadcast.
Thank you.
You do such a great job bringing it to life. Anytime I'm in the car, if I'm not watching the game, I'm listening. Awesome hearing you there. Centered on Buffalo is the podcast. You get everybody on. You've had Brandon Beane and Joe Brady and Josh Allen, and the guy you look up and you've got former players. So it's really entertaining, insightful show. Definitely check that out before talking to Josh myself. That was a great conversation that you guys had. But yeah, I don't know where you want to start. Why don't we just, while we're talking about it, start there, year one of Rex, because you kind of were that calming influence. I'm trying to think back to like this time 11 years ago. I want to say I was at the Niagara Falls Air Force Base, and Rex is jumping out of a plane, and
Right.
shortly after that, he's eating dog biscuits at press conferences, and you got Shady McCoy talking about, no weird orgy things, parties that he threw, the NDA, and Icahn Polly's getting signed and named a captain. It was Aaron Kromer. I mean, what a comeback for Aaron Kromer, by the way. I remember when that went down thinking like, wow, is he going to be the coach? And to Rex's credit, he stood by him after the whole beach chair gate. It was like one thing after another. So what was that summer like into year one of Rex? And then you guys beat the Colts, and Guinness Book of World Records is going to come to that Patriots game week 2.
Right. Yeah. And then our guys got a little too jacked up going into that game. And we had, I think, 3 personal fouls in the first quarter, which if you give Brady in that offense 3 first downs, they're going to put up some points on you. But no, it was an exciting time. I'll be honest. We're coming off of a season where we thought we should have made the playoffs in 2014. We blow one late to, I guess they were Oakland Raiders at the time. We blow one out there, which that could have put us in a position to get in the playoffs. But we're all thinking, we got the team, we got the squad to do. We have some fun off-season acquisitions. We bring in, Percy Harvin and, who we bring in? Tyrod, Castle. Tyrod actually did not start our first game. Castle did because Tyrod was lined up wide. There was a lot going on, but honestly, it was fun. It was exciting. We bring in Greg Roman, who I was a fan of from afar when he was out in San Francisco, watching them run the ball down people's throats, and having him in the building was great. Got to work with Chrome for a couple years there, which was awesome and great for my career. If I didn't have the career-ending neck injury, Um, a lot of stuff that Cromer taught me would have been implemented to extend my career maybe further than it should have. Just, I mean, kind of, yes, he gets the guys to play tough and finish plays, but he's also like, hey, on this play, if you just back up and pull him to you, he's out of the play. Like you get that full playoff, and that's, we want penetration on that play there. It separates. He just kind of, it's almost counterintuitive to the like, we're tougher than them and we're going to bash our heads in them and we're going to, show dominance. There's times where he's like, let him run up the field. It's a draw or whatever it may be. But Chrome was awesome. Loved working with Tyrod. We had an awesome offensive line. We get 2 new guards that year, Richie and John Miller, who were both excellent. That was a fun time.
Yeah, Richie was like the 987th craziest thing on that team. Like, it's kind of an afterthought. And that was his comeback tour there with the Bills. And he's getting to the Pro Bowl. You guys led the league in rushing. There was a lot of good there. There was just a lot of other stuff, like there's a lot of noise. There's a lot happening off the field. It was just something every day. I think that was kind of your point originally, is that can be a great thing, right? I think Rex is on the cover of SI at Big Tree Inn eating the wings. There was a lot of attention on the Bills, but some way, somehow, things kind of went off the rails, especially in the year 2.
Yeah, year two, everything kind of comes to a head where we weren't as good of a team, likely. Greg Roman becomes the scapegoat after week 2. So now Anthony Lynn's our new offensive coordinator. Well, he's kind of got to run similar to when Joe Brady took over for Ken Dorsey. You can't just implement a whole new playbook. You can implement a few new things week to week, but you essentially have to maybe put your touches or your play calling style on their offense, which is essentially what we had with Anthony Lynn there. And yeah, there was a lot going on. Yeah. Obviously we wish it would have worked out. We also drafted to a 4-3 scheme. Then Rex comes in. Okay, where's Mario Williams, our highest paid defensive player in the NFL when we signed him? Well, he's not a true stand-up outside linebacker. He's also not a 5 technique. Like, he's really got no spot on our defense, so just probably not a great fit. But when you're looking to invigorate an organization and you're playing the longest playoff drought in pro sports, someone that's doing the stuff that he was doing off the field can make it a lot more exciting to come, at least to those opening games.
Yeah, Preston Brown was on one of these a year or 2 ago, and he was dissecting all of that. That was really the issue more than anything. It's like, you've got this great thing. You've got this defense that flustered a league MVP and Aaron Rodgers, played really well against Peyton Manning, I want to say, that 2014 season 2. And it's see ball, get ball, point A to point B, simplistic, just D linemen storming up the field. And then it's, holy hell, all this disguised. It's deception. Players running on the field, off the field, checks on checks on checks. And I suppose that's how you can kind of bring it to, like, that's good. The Bills are trying to do that now, but
shoot, if you got the right guys from an offensive lineman's perspective, it's give me the guys where I know where they're going to be every play. Don't, when we don't know where you're going to line up, what scheme you're going to run, what blitzes you're running week to week, that's tough on us. In New York, when you have Cromartie and Revis on the outside, there's 2 guys gone essentially on the outside on each play. It gives you some more freedom to, kind of mix and match what your looks are on a play-to-play basis. And then, they had drafted for that scheme for a number of years, and, they were able to kind of fill it out with the right bodies there.
I mean, when I sat down with Joe Brady, he said what drove him nuts as a play caller is sitting up in that booth. The play clock hits 15. He can't talk to Josh Allen, and all of a sudden the defense is doing a lot of different things. So he hires Jim Leonard to do exactly that. But to you, Eric, I mean, you're the center on the other end of it. So, I mean, you can speak to this all. What is that happy medium then for Jim Leonard and the Bills defense? Because you got to ramp up the confusion. You don't want to go full Rex.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say, Rex Ryan's defenses didn't blow a lot of coverages when they were in New York. Blame it on the guys maybe we had on the back end or however that worked out. But, there was never a play, or maybe it just got to that point with Rex throughout his career where maybe there wasn't as much accountability, or maybe it just wasn't there in Buffalo. Maybe it's on us as players that we should have policed it all better. I mean, shoot, maybe we should take the blame within the locker room, but have multiple games where you have 10 guys on the field and there's big plays happening, or the blitzer doesn't come and then we're not mirrored up on the second level. To me, the happy medium would be calling plays that that all the guys can be on the same page. And maybe that's only 2 to 3 unique looks a week where you hammer it home all week. It might not be 15 because, guys aren't used to the scheme or whatever that may be. But this scheme with 5 guys at the line of scrimmage. So, I mean, it's not the old school 3-4 with Vince Wilfork plug in the middle with, the Pittsburgh Steelers, all the 2 white guys, Kiesel and Aaron Smith at 6'5", 290 with long arms that just hold off your tackles, and then the big backers butt your guards. Like, that's not this scheme anymore, but there's 5 guys at the line of scrimmage. It's hard to slide protections. It puts a lot of pressure on the O-line to go one-on-one up front because you don't know which side that – if they're only bringing 4, you don't know which side that 5th guy or that, the 4 are coming from. So it creates a lot of one-on-ones up front, and that's where you see a Denver defense last year, and they got studs across that front, but they get a lot of one-on-ones, or you have to keep in tight ends or running backs, and they got to be good in protection or else they can get smoked. And so, yeah, it's I mean, look at Seattle runs a form of it. Like, a lot of these top defenses are running a form of it. I'm not saying you can't be great the other way, but you got to have – like, one level of your defense has to be absolutely elite. Think back to, when Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, Tre'Davious White, that group was rolling on the back end. They give those guys a little extra time up front to, get home. This way, this year, you're just getting a lot more one-on-ones, or you should be getting a lot more one-on-ones. And I'm excited to see how they mix and match those guys. Can a Greg Rousseau pop inside on a 3rd down or an obvious pass rush situation? Could that be a Chubb who bumps in? Could it be a TJ Parker? He did some of that at Clemson. Just where they line these guys up in pass rush situations to try to get 5 one-on-ones across the board to be able to create some havoc. And likely you're going to need some help from some of those edge guys to be able to bump inside.
Man, that's great stuff. You're right. It is
and Michael Hoyt would be your best candidate to do it, assuming he's healthy.
Boy, he was so good before he popped that Achilles.
7 of the best quarters. I mean, a full season of how he played 7 quarters, and he's the defensive MVP. I mean, just realistically.
Yeah. It was kind of like the Malik Willis as an inside rusher, right? It looks so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it is kind of all parties involved. It's like, I tend to just dump all this blame on Rex. And, you don't want Marcel Darius dropping into coverage at Arrowhead and Mario Williams being paid $100 million to do God knows what. But also, Mario Williams probably shouldn't be playing with his remote control cars late in the season, completely checking out of things.
No doubt.
I couldn't find that story I wrote at the Buffalo News. It has just disappeared into the ether of the archives. That was a fun one. I know Joe from Queens had his hand up. He's got a newborn on his lap, so he's in and out. There he is.
Sorry, there he is. There's the kid. Okay. Eric, how you doing, man? I have a question. You've been covering the Bills for I think 9-10 years now almost.
Yeah.
Is there a guy that you have covered that you're that guy reminds me of me? And it doesn't have to be an offensive lineman. It could just be mentality, how they talk. It could be a defensive player. Is there a guy that you're that guy reminds me of me?
Man, that's a great question. It's easy to say the centers, a Connor McGovern, a Mitch Morse, those types of guys. I mean, centers all kind of talk and act alike for the most part. A lot of times they're going to be kind of at least try to be your cerebral ones and talk to the media pretty professionally. Just, they're your kind of glue guy in the middle. Alec Anderson and myself have some similarities how I was early in my career to where, kind of the practice fights and the little shoves after the plays and whatnot, just kind of the fire starter out there. I don't know. So I had Cromer on the podcast, and I asked him who the smartest O lineman that played for him was, and he went to say me, and I was like, this wasn't kind of a setup. And then he was like David Edwards, and there's times where I see some similarities in my game and David Edwards, especially when I was playing guard, where look, I'm not Carl Nix or Jari Evans at 350 pounds, just road grade a guy, but I can catch you at times. But I'm going to try and be in the perfect position, and I might be able to help out the center with some calls and whatnot. So I'll say David Edwards, but I honestly think I did not play guard as well as him. I'll just say that.
How do you think Alec Anderson will fare at guard? He's kind of been waiting in the wings. He's played a lot of snaps. He's awesome to talk to in there. Holy
Oh, he's
shit.
great.
He'll be a magnet for all of us after games. But as a player, brawling in the middle, playing 1,000 snaps, you can't pay everybody if you're the Buffalo
Right.
Bills. So he's the guy you're counting on the cheat right now.
So I'll say this. One of the staffers told me 2 years ago, maybe even 3, maybe it was before he even started playing that sixth offensive lineman role, that he even without playing a snap, he's one of the alphas in that room. He guys look up to him, they respect his work ethic, and when something goes down with a defensive lineman or whatever, it's usually Alex setting the tone. And so I know he's got a lot of respect in that room. I would assume they give him the first shot just from being there. He's, whether it's Corbin or whoever that he's going to be in competition with, those guys could potentially have more experience at guard. He might be kind of similar to Connor McGovern, a more natural center than guard. But man, I feel like the effort that he's going to put in, it's going to be tough to beat him out unless he gets out there and he's uncomfortable pass protecting at guard. Now, there'd be nothing on film that I've seen that would indicate it, especially when you consider he'd go out on the edge. But when you're maybe a more natural center, you're not a 300 and, Richie's 335 and he's built to play guard. Run down my chest. If a guy's bigger and stronger than me and I'm playing guard, I got to set at the line of scrimmage. I got to thud you up right there because I got to give myself a little bit of space. I'm probably going to give up a yard or two, which is perfect. I'm just not dropping back 2 yards and starting the fight there. Alex probably going to have to play a similar game, but I think he's a heck of a football player. He's an asset, and you can't pay everybody. And, you chose to re-sign Connor, but that might have just been the more affordable deal, and you play it that way. I'm not sure. That's a Brandon Beane conversation, but I think with either of them, you were letting one of them walk and prepping for that, knowing you had Alec Anderson.
No doubt about it. And, we've got a good crew in here, so feel free to jump in whenever you guys want. Just kind of a follow-up to that, Eric. Last season, and this is where Joe Brady did kind of stay at the forefront of where offenses, innovation, philosophy, whatever word you want to use it, was going. 3 tight ends, going heavy.
Mm-hmm.
I think as all these defenses tried to stop these finesse athletic quarterbacks and spread offenses, they got lighter, a lot of 220, 230 pound linebackers. So here's the Rams. One of many teams, and the Bills too. I just looked this up. They led the league in 3 tight end sets last year, 126 pass attempts and whatever it is, 200 plus rush attempts, 2,000 yards, 32 touchdowns. But now, all right, full off season, teams can prepare for that. They can try to defend the heavy looks. And the sense I got talking to Brandon Beane, Joe Brady, Josh Allen is maybe that counter is going to be going back to some spreading it out a little bit. If you're the Bills, if you're Joe Brady, what do you do? What's the next step offensively, scheme-wise?
That's a great question. Yeah, if you look at the top 10 offenses from last year, 7 of the top 10 were in the top 10 of using 13 personnel. So the teams that used it were very effective. Now, when you look down the list, it's the Kyle Shanahans and, the McVays and Joe Brady. They're household names as offensive coordinators too. So I don't want to undermine that. To me, another point to make on the 3 tight end looks, a good tight end can cost you $7 to $8 million a year. A good receiver costs you 25 to 30. So you can get good players on the field a lot cheaper than paying all those wide receivers out there. Now, I think the Bills have improved on the outside, especially obviously with DJ Moore. Keon Coleman hopefully comes into his own in year 3. You got Shakir. We'll see what we get from Josh Palmer, Skylar Bell you drafted, the list goes on. And so I think you can kind of play the game you want to play each week. Kincaid, if you're in 12 personnel, you could put Kincaid at wide receiver, and he is a good wide receiver in the NFL. You can just split him out, and instantly you started in 12 personnel with 2 tight ends. Now you're in 11 with 1 tight end. And some teams will treat us like that when Kincaid is on the field. The kicker is those guys got to be able to block. Dawson Knox can. Jackson, brain fart in the last name.
Pause.
Yeah. He is an absolute beast blocker.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you don't have to put Alec Anderson on the field because you have Jackson Halls out there. And so you got to have the right guys to do it. There was some vision before last season by a number of those teams saying, okay, we're going to load up on these guys. I mean, Jackson Halls would have been a second-round draft pick this year, likely, with this change of pace. I mean, he probably is a second or third-round draft pick. We get him in the 5th or the 6th. It's just you were a year ahead of the curve there. And so I think you'll still see a lot of it. And then as teams get bigger, you'll throw the ball more out of it, or you'll try and compromise those bigger guys that you get on the field. And, it's similar to when Gronk and Hernandez were lighting the league on fire. And then you see everyone start drafting these athletic linebackers, bigger safeties. And, the Bills tried to do it too. It's like we drafted Nick Harris and we drafted Denoris Searcy and these guys, Aaron Williams, these guys. Okay, well, how do we combat that? We're going to draft guys to try and stay ahead of this.
A Nick Harris reference. There's some names I haven't heard in a while.
But he was a safety in college, converts him to linebacker. Oklahoma. Saw the other day he's modeling or doing something now.
Really? Wow. Okay.
No, he is going to play Ray Lewis in the new movie about Ray Lewis.
That's right.
That's what it was.
Wow. Great pull. Yeah, because you know what? The Rams, they did all these 3 tight end looks and going heavy, but at the same time, Matthew Stafford won MVP. He's pushing the ball down the field. You still have to have that. Who do the Bills need in the passing game to step up? I mean, open-ended question, go with a lot of different guys here, but who are you really looking at, Eric?
DJ Moore. I mean, he's a guy that can do it all 3 levels of the defense. A guy who's an absolute stud, has had some accuracy issues throwing him the football throughout his career. Crowded receiving room and a lot of running last year in Chicago. Numbers are down, but it's still a guy that can make plays, a guy that at all 3 levels is better than anyone we have. Are there guys that we have, maybe Shakir's better in the intermediate or whatever you want to say, but at all 3 levels combined, he's by far our biggest threat out there. So he's got to step up this year, and he's got to be a playmaker for us. And hopefully him and Josh can get on the same page early. Beyond that, I think Shakir will be used more downfield this year. Joe Brady, I always joke with Joe Brady about the screens every time he comes on the podcast. I'm like, I'm sure you've never heard this, but there has been some criticism about the amount of wide receiver screens. I try to bring on the broadcast and even the roundtable before the game some light to those screens. So I'm like, every time they run one, yes, they would love for it to go for 20 yards. A 4-yard gain is simply us replacing one of our run plays, and a 4-yard rush is a productive rush in the NFL. And then I'm like, even the ones that go for no gain, as long as it's not third and medium, those weren't necessarily a dead play. That might be a setup for later. It also requires them to keep pulling people out. So when James Cook hits a shotgun run up the middle for 25 yards, that defender's standing out there because we ran 3 screens early. That puts a lot of stress on the defense to defend the whole field. And when they know that's a possibility and they know that Shakir had the most yards after catch in the NFL last year, you got to go respect it. Jacksonville playoff game. That's a fake wide receiver screen, and Dalton Kincaid catches the touchdown pass towards the end of the game. Do we run them? Are some of them fails? Sure. There's failed run plays, there's failed deep shots, and all of that. And I get they become an easy target, but I try to just like create some perspective at times like that. Like everyone's piling on one thing. Like let me shed a little bit of light. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying that the one that you're referring to was dumb, but for the most part, they set up a lot within this offense. And if I'm on the left side of a wide receiver screen, and even for Josh Allen, it's almost a playoff. And it can still hit, but you're only stressing, a third of the field over there. And so for a lot of guys, it's almost not that you're looking for a break throughout a game, but it allows guys to stay more mentally committed and engaged throughout an entire game. For offensive linemen, we run a naked bootleg. We're all going left. We got to sell the run, but the play's kind of over. It's like the offense coordinator kind of just threw us a bone.
I mean, naturally, I'm kind of a contrarian, so I do love it when he calls a wide receiver screen after he's called several wide receiver screens and everybody loses their mind. But yeah, there were a lot of them last year, which you've got Josh Allen, you've got a big arm. Josh he said it on your show, working on that deep ball. I have to think that they stretch things down the field a little bit this year.
I agree. And okay, so this is speculation, but I think it's been pretty established this offseason that maybe there were times where the offense was encouraged to be a little bit more conservative from game to game. Hey, get Josh to not turn the ball over. How do you make your quarterback not turn the ball over? You hand it off and you throw wide receiver screens and you attack the intermediate areas in zone. You know what I mean? It's conservative. They still scored about 30 points a game doing it.
Yeah.
But if there was influence, then that would make sense that, okay, well, if we're going to be able to run the ball this many times, how do we get defenders out of the box? Okay, well, we have to stress them with screen looks on the outside.
Well, and I'll just put it bluntly too. I mean, yeah, like if your boss is telling you we got to play some keep away here, we've got to be conservative. Patrick Mahomes is over there. You're going to run the ball. That's what I had heard. He is calling the plays, but how did he get the job? They fired the offensive coordinator, Ken Dorsey. You're probably going to listen to your boss.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's some truth to that.
Joe from Queens, hand up. Let's hear it.
Hey, what's up? Again, no video this time. Eric, when Sean McDermott was let go, did you see it coming at all when it happened, or was it like a complete shock to you, like for everyone else?
I had no insider knowledge. It was not a shock to me. I was leaving Denver. I don't travel with the team. I travel separate. I was driving in a car to the airport after the game. And when I heard those guys in the locker room, and I don't know, it was so devastating that it wasn't going to surprise me what happened after, just with the devastation that was in that locker room. And it came from McDermott's mouth as well. I mean, I was just listening to, the post-game coverage, like, man, these guys are gutted. It wouldn't surprise me to see some type of change here in the next few days. And so I wasn't completely shocked. But it was still like startling. It hit me to the core. A guy that I've spent a ton of time with, a ton of respect for him. He wrote the foreword for the book that I wrote. So it's like, we have a strong relationship in all that, but when you lose in similar fashion enough times, whether it's his fault, and everyone point to Josh's 5 turnovers, I get it. Like, I'm not saying that game was Sean McDermott's fault, and I don't think anybody is. It's just, okay, the window is constantly shrinking, and we don't know how close it is to being tight, but Josh's window is shrinking. Can we lose in a similar fashion again? And, heading into a new stadium and this and that. So, and then they do the full coaching search, and I'll say it, and we could talk about the Joe Brady hire. I love the hire. I do, for a number of reasons. One of which is if someone had the league MVP 2 years ago at quarterback and was the offensive coordinator for that team, and then the next year they had the leading rusher, and you could prove you could do it both ways. To me, if that guy came from the McVay tree, we'd throw a parade in Buffalo. Well, we have him in our building, and he's a Sean Payton guy. He's not a McDermott disciple. So you're going to get a change of messaging and culture, but you also still keep an absolute stud of a coach. I mean, it would have gutted me if Joe Brady takes another gig and just lights it on fire. Like, you'd be sitting there, we had this guy in our building. How do we let him go?
Hey, Ty, I had a question for Eric. Thanks for doing this.
For sure. What's up, Bill?
Appreciate you ending the drought. To go back to the drought years a little bit, I just one thing that I certainly remember from those years was your injury, and I was just wondering, not a talk about question, but maybe a talk about question of just what you did to come back. And it was just, as a fan, it was just really impressive to me how you were earlier in career, had a devastating Joe Theismann type injury, and then, came back to be Pro Bowl level.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Bill. Thanks for the kind remarks. And it wasn't very fun. I'll say that. I had never been hurt in my life. I'd never had a surgery, never missed a game in my entire life. And then my first one was a big one. Yeah, it wasn't a very fun road back. There was a lot of ups and downs, but, we had a great training staff at the time with the Bills, awesome support system, encouraging coaches, surrounded by family and friends. Rehabbed some of the offseason back in Louisville because I'd gotten snowed out of back-to-back rehab sessions at the facility, and I'm just sitting in my apartment by myself. I'm like, I got to get out of here for a while. Just go refresh, recharge. So I did some of my rehab back in Louisville, so grateful for their staff and whatnot. But, man, it's lonely. You get hurt in the NFL, they go back to meetings, and you're sitting in the training room, and they go out to practice, and you go home, and you're almost just away from everything. I'm not making light of this at all, but Rondale Moore, who spent the last couple of seasons injured, just committed suicide. And I'm not saying I ever got to a point like that, but some of his remarks that people had said that he mentioned where he just felt like even though he's on the team, he's not a part of it, and he felt like he couldn't even reach out to guys because he didn't want to distract them during the season. I feel some of those remarks. But you know what? It was my rookie year, and if there was a way to return, I was going to put my heart and soul into doing it, and got back and started the first game of the season next year. Now, I played about 10 pounds lighter than I was the previous season because I didn't get all the muscle and weight back. I had lost 37 pounds in 4 weeks after breaking my leg. And so it was a process of getting my leg healthy, but then also trying to get some weight and muscle back on before the next season. But you know what? In the end, you prove it to yourself you could do it then. Then I tore my ACL 2 years later. Well, I'm like, well, I did it once. I'll do it again. Then I broke my other leg in 2016, not nearly as bad. It's like once you prove to yourself you could do tough things, it becomes easier to do those tough things again. And, I think those have served me in life, when other non-football related tough things have come up.
Yeah, it was really impressive. Just a kind of maybe not as heavy follow-up, but what was it like playing with T.O.? That just was a big thing your year and or your rookie year, and it just just maybe what was like playing with him as a teammate.
I wish I could have played with him my whole career. I mean, he was awesome. And I know that was later in his career. We didn't catch all the drama and all that, but T.O. was a model for us young guys of what a Hall of Famer looks like and acts like. I mean, that dude is in peak shape when he shows up for training camp, and he handles his business. He takes a ton of reps at practice to get in shape for the games, and he eats a certain way, and he's got physical trainers around him. He doesn't go out. It's like, for me, it was a model of like, okay, well, this dude's a Hall of Famer, and I see how some of the other guys kind of treat their bodies or act. I'm like, okay, I want to be like him and his offensive lineman. We can have some fun, and we don't have to worry as much about maybe our body fat percentage. But I asked him on my podcast one time, I asked him what his favorite wing spot in Buffalo was. And he said he didn't know because he never had any. And I said, what do you mean? You don't like chicken wings? He said, no, I love chicken wings, but I wasn't there to eat chicken wings. I was there to try and win and continue my career and play at a high level. I'm like, that says a lot, because I think he might have been the only one that didn't eat chicken wings in Buffalo.
I mean,
Thanks.
hell, even Brian Westbrook on the pod last week, and he's kind of detailing the whole Eagles melodrama with Donovan McNabb, and they're not even talking to each other, and it all falls apart. He kind of made that same point, as like he changed everything with the way he practiced. Like before he got there, a guy would catch a ball, run 10 yards, 15 yards, and he's taken every single one to the end zone at practice. And, it's making practice 20, 30 minutes longer, but that part shouldn't get lost in the T.O. legacy. I mean, he's in the Hall of Fame for a reason. His numbers are absurd. But man, he worked his ass off on top of everything else.
He did. And, in training camp, he missed about a week for a toe injury. And we thought, we're playing in the Hall of Fame game. Like, he doesn't want to be here. Whether he did or he didn't, when he showed back up, that dude was flying around. And we're like, okay, he's ready to roll. He's good to go. Now, he is like most number one receivers, and he wasn't as boisterous on the sideline in Buffalo, but you could feel it when he didn't get involved early. Like, hey, 81's over here. Like, don't lose me here. Like, come on.
And also, you guys started 1-4. I mean, that season kind of fell apart fairly quickly, and he's 36 years old. So, like, he gets the key to the city.
We fired
our off pretty quickly.
We fired our offensive coordinator after our fifth preseason game, right before the start of the season. On cut day, we cut our OC, not one of our, including players. We also cut our offensive coordinator. We cut our projected starting left tackle in Langston Walker. I mean, there was a lot going on.
Was that Turk Schoner?
Turk Schoner. Good memory.
Wow. Okay.
And then Alex Van Pelt takes over. My boy AVP.
You know what's sad, though, is I was at the Big Tree Inn recording a pod with Jay Skursky. His jersey is no longer hanging up at the Big Tree Inn. They took it down. I don't know why.
Wow.
Legend, Alex Van Pelt. I'm sure he frequented that establishment.
So they always say you either have to be a Hall of Famer or spend $100,000 to get in there to get your jersey on the wall.
All right.
My jersey's up. I will not be a Hall of Famer, and I promise you, I feel like I've been given more beers there than I've even spent on them. But they frequented the Big Tree a lot more than we did back in the day. I think that was an everyday stop for them.
Yeah, I mean, like pre-Twitter, you could probably get away with quite a bit in life.
No doubt. We'd like to go there after a 1 p.m. away trip that wasn't too far. So, like, go in there and watch Sunday Night Football. Get in there at 7:30 or 8, hang out for a couple hours. That was kind of our sweet spot, to where there might be still a few people in there from watching football, but we weren't necessarily going in there after home games.
Joe, hit us.
You guys talked a little bit earlier about the defense changing under Rex Ryan from like the 4-3, I think it was like the wide 9 was called, that Schwartz ran to, Rex's defense.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of flash back a little bit to that when I'm thinking of Jim Leonard a little bit, because they had the 4-3. Now they're going to a 3-4. I don't really know anything about what kind of defense he wants to run. But do you feel that's a little bit of a concern, that there could be a baptism by fire where this defense, it might take a year for it to like figure it out, since they've been a 4-3 for, almost a decade now?
That's a great question. And here's the point I'll make. The answer is yes. Your point is correct. The difference is our defense, it was either yards or points in 2014, was ranked number 1 in the league. We also led the league in sacks, I believe. We did not do any of that last year. So we're not going from this juggernaut defense to a scheme change. We're just changing. We're changing schemes and looking for better results, not changing schemes looking for similar results, if that makes sense. And so to me, could there be some growing pains? Sure. But you also went out and got a Bradley Chubb who's played in this system. You got a faster nickel and D Alford that can run with guys in man coverage, which is going to be valuable if you're going to blitz teams, to have more speed in the slot there. You bring in a CJ Gardner-Johnson who's more of a ball hawk. If we're going to play more just single high, he's a great center fielder back there. So I think they were intentional about it. Now, how's Deion Walker going to fit in this scheme? How is Landon Jackson? And, the list goes on inside. Who's going to play the nose guard? And, we'll see how all that shakes out. Does Ed Oliver translate to this defense? Reminds me of a Kyle Williams who did play well under Rex as well. You single up that backside three, they can make – Kyle didn't have any down years in Buffalo in general, and he certainly didn't under Rex. And so, some guys can make the scheme change easy. Guys like Rousseau, for him, he's going to be a stand-up edge, and he's going to do similar things than he did with McDermott. And I will say the Schwartz defense with the wide nines, those defensive ends were playing in a stance about 3 yards wider than our guys were last year. In this scheme, it's not going to be as drastic, I'll say. But great question.
I mean, Mario Williams, Marcel Darius, both signed $100 million contracts. And I feel like this is probably a hole in my reporting looking back, you kind of see it the more you cover this game, and you're living it in that locker room, Eric. You get paid, some players keep busting their ass, keep working, and some don't. I mean, I was just talking to a coach in San Francisco about Brandon Ayuk, and he's like, man, for 8 months, Brandon Ayuk, like he was coached up, he was trained, he knew what to do, he knew what to say. He's like, he was in the doghouse with Kyle Shanahan early in his career. Like Trent Sherfield's playing over him, and eventually gets on the field and makes the big catch in the NFC Championship game, has 1,400 yards, says everything right, gets paid, and then holy hell, his career/life have gone off the rails. I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying that Darius and Mario Williams were Brandon Ayuk, but I mean, these are humans. They're not robots. I got to think that factored into this defense just looking like something else under Rex Ryan.
No doubt. I mean, with that type of money, if we have TJ Watt and JJ Watt on our defensive line, how much different does it look? And yeah, I'll say it, and they both know it. Their effort wasn't great at times, and Mario didn't play the toughest out on the edge. And at 6'5", 290, he should have been able to bump inside and play better, and he didn't. And Marcel will admit to you, he's out there having fun. And, did he try harder in Jim Schwartz's system, or did Jim provide – so in Jim Schwartz's system, they tell you, play the run on the way to the quarterback. Jet up the field every play. You're on a track to where we think the quarterback's going to be, and wreak havoc to get there. And if you tackle the ball carrier on the way, great. If not, it's the linebacker's job to fit off of you. Well, when those guys are penetrating that hard, it can be hard to run the ball against them too, which it was. Well, Marcel was just going straight up the field every single play, trying to get a sack. Well, he got, 10, 11, and then got paid $100 million. You make him go back to read, react. Oh, okay, shoot. Now it's a pass because it's play action. It's harder for him to go get the sacks. And, it just – but Marcel will tell you, like, football's not that big to him. He's had every close person in his life pass, and he's been through so much that, like, he wants to go win and he wants to be good, but, like, he's not going to sweat it too hard because he's been through so much.
Totally. I remember.
But you gotta know not to pay that guy. If you're in our position with the Bills, hell, he went to Jacksonville, that defense was awesome and all that, but you just got to be so careful paying those guys in Buffalo because we don't necessarily have at that time a franchise quarterback and other things that can make up for a couple mishaps.
You know, if Jim Onis was on here, he'd say the same exact thing. It's
Yep.
so true. I mean, everybody in his life was dying. I talked to him about it extensively, and it was kind of a confluence of factors. I can remember I was chuckling while you're talking about like 2014 to 2015. I think it was the exhibition game in Detroit. Caught him at his locker, and he said the Bills were treating him like a dime a dozen. Dime a dozen, Darius. And it was probably 24 hours later that $96 million contract went down. And you also, I mean, you know this. I think Terry Pagula, the owner of the team, personally really took him under his wing with everything he was
Right.
dealing with off the field. Like he really cared for him as a human being. And I mean, there's where you can make a tough decision, right? Like you just don't hand that player, that person dealing with so much. You don't know what the motivation's going to be. You can't give him that money when you don't have the franchise quarterback.
For sure. And it'd be even harder nowadays with what these quarterbacks are making. So it probably wouldn't happen either way. But no, I mean, if we paid Kyle Williams $100 million contract, which we never did because he never got the free agency and all that, it's like no one would have batted an eye and he would have never slowed down. You gotta know like you said, got to know what the motivations are. And, I was talking to one of the Bengals, I'll just say one of the Bengals coaches over the weekend, and he was talking about Dexter Lawrence, and he was like, man, he has been so great, shows up the day he signed for workouts and this and that. And I'm like, there's just not a great track record on paying 350-pound defensive linemen a lot of money. There just isn't. Now, he got traded away. He didn't hit free agency. He got traded. Will there be a prove it year, 6 months? I'd imagine. But is there going to be 3 to 4 years of it when he's already kind of slowed down in production and he looks huge? I don't know. We'll see.
Great point. I know Pete has his hand up, and I've got one more for Eric after that. Thanks for hanging this long, Eric.
For sure.
Hey guys, thanks for doing this. Eric, you got anything planned with Ryan Fitzpatrick for the home opener regular season game?
That's a great question. We don't have anything on the books yet, but I'd imagine we'll get something going. He did an event with Whitworth last year. A buddy of mine passed, and I ended up not being able to make it up the night before the Bills game last year that Fitz was in town for. But we will try and get something on the books for sure where, I think they did just like a podcast recording and hung out with fans at a bar. I'd imagine there's something along those lines.
Ty's still waiting to hear about your Orlando plans.
I know. I tried to convince Sammy Watkins for another sit down, but it did not succeed. He is down there though. He's doing great. He's coaching. He's embracing dad life. So some way somehow I'll get down there. We are doing the Disney Universal though, Pete.
Nice.
You help talk our family into that. I've been referring to it as once in a lifetime to the family.
Before you set it up, we'll take care of you.
Awesome. All right. I did get a text from Jim Monis, Eric. If you can still hear me, I don't know if my audio is cutting in and out. Okay. He says that offensive line play is overrated, overvalued, overrated. I'm going to give you the floor. I sent him a link. He can defend himself if he'd like. He's not here, so it's all you, Eric.
Is offensive line play overrated? I do not think you need 5 first-rounders across the front. I don't think you need 5 highly paid guys. If you have 5 adequate guys that are smart and you have a quarterback that's smart that can get the ball out of his hands, you can be statistically a very good offensive line. I say statistically in quotes because we don't necessarily get stats, but you could say average rushing yards per carry, average yards before contact, hits on the quarterback, pressure, sacks, all that. With all these film breakdown people out there that do a great job, some people are getting a lot more perspective on it's not always the O-lineman's fault when there is a sack on a play. I actually had this conversation with that same Bengals coach about their offensive line, and he said, look, Burrow gets the ball out of his hands so quick that we don't need 5 world beaters up there. When he gets beat up, it's because our defense gave up 40 and we're trying to catch up, and they know we're throwing it every single play, and we got to push the ball down the field because we're down by 2 scores with 8 minutes to go in the game. He's like, that's when everyone can get on us about our offensive line. Well, I'd rather pay our defensive line and our defensive players to make them better so we can just run a balanced offense throughout the game because we're not giving up 30-something points a game with a record-setting terrible defense. So I don't think Manos is far off. I know he's joking and I know he's being facetious. Offensive lines can be very valuable, and they are. But if you look at those Patriots teams, they paid Matt Light some. Logan Mankins was, Hall of Fame guard. Beyond that, they just rotated the rest,
You're right. And I love the perspective in Cincinnati. I was talking to a coach with the Bengals last week too, and he said that there's a pep in the step of Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins when they just see that the front office is giving a shit about the defense.
Yes.
Right? They're actually paying guys on that side of the ball. That can go a long way too. So,
yep.
All right. Also, you mentioned it earlier, a plug for Eric Wood. Buy his book, Tackle What's Next, Own Your Story, Stack Wins, and Achieve Your Goals in Business and Life. I'm on Amazon right now. It says there's one left in stock. So everybody should race to Amazon to buy that copy. 4.8 stars on Amazon. That's not easy. So
there you go. Appreciate
I got to
that.
read it still. I got to check it out. Maybe I'll beat everybody to the punch there.
There you go.
This was awesome. Thanks so much, Eric.
Absolutely. My pleasure. That was fun.
Listen to the podcast, watch it, and of course, listen to Eric everywhere covering these games. Let's do it again soon.
Let's do it. I appreciate it, brother. You're a pro. I always love sitting down with you.
Thanks a lot. And thanks so much, everyone, for
Thanks.
hanging out here on the happy hour.
See you guys. Thanks for coming on.